So I've just listened to track 1. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and it's slow. It's much slower than the song tends to be. Although I'm trying to think, I've heard Johnny Mathis' version from 1986, which is used in Home Alone 2: Lost in New York, 1992. I think it was also used in the second Gremlins film as well. So I've heard his version. And of course, probably the most well-known version, as I said, and most familiar to me, is Perry Como and the Fontaine Sisters with Mitchell Ayres and his orchestra from 1951. That's really interesting because there's a little bit at the end, Sure It's Christmas once more. Now, it only credits Meredith Willson, the composer, so it doesn't credit Michael Bublé, but that's the only time I've actually heard that lyric. But it's very interesting, that, and yeah, you might find it a bit dreary. I think personally for me, probably, although I do love Michael Bublé, I think for this one, for me it has to be Perry Como and the Fontaine Sisters for me, because there's that excitement and that's a really sort of jolly arrangement, and so is Johnny Mathis, but it's still enjoyable, and as ever with Michael Bublé, I don't think I've never not enjoyed anything that he's done, actually, he's got a new album out, so there still might be time for that, but yeah, it's a good start. It's different to other versions that you may know, but it's nice. It's got a sort of chilled out sort of atmosphere and feeling. So yeah, see what you think. So I've just finished listening to track 2, and it's his version of Santa Claus Is Coming to Town, and it's great. It's really great. It's a nice big band jazz feel. In fact, the beginning sort of reminds me, If You Crossed Fever, made famous, of course, by Peggy Lee, and, well, Michael himself has done it, and Elvis has done it, loads of artists have done it. Big jazz standard. So If You Crossed Fever with Santa Claus Is Coming to Town. And, yeah, I really like it. It's probably my third best version after the Supremes, a pop version, and Frank Sinatra's 1957 recording of Santa Claus Is Coming to Town. And yes, it's great, and I like that he even dropped the big fat man with the long white beard. That is taken from Bing Crosby's recording of Santa Claus Is Coming to Town. So I like that he does that, and with little things like that, it shows Michael is a huge fan, and, well, it might seem obvious to you because he's doing that kind of music, but he is a fan of the crooners. So, Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., all those lot. And, yeah, even little things like that, it's wonderful, and he just, and you always get the fact, of course, that Michael is enjoying himself. You could imagine being in the studio with him, recording these songs, and just seeing the great big smile on his face as he's singing them. he loves to sing, and he loves the style of music he's singing, and he's passionate, and you can tell, you can get a sense of that. So it's again a fantastic track. Right, on to track 3 next, so we'll see what that is. So I've just finished listening to track 3, and as I said, it's Jingle Bells featuring the Papini Sisters, based on Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters 1943 recording. And the Papini Sisters, well, I didn't know this till the other day actually, they're from the UK, and they're basically capture the spirit of the Andrews Sisters and the Fontaine Sisters and the Beverly Sisters, basically all those female trio groups of the 30s and 40s basically. And it's a very energetic performance from them and Michael on this. And if you like to dance the Charleston, then it's a pretty good one to do it to. It's it's a very Charleston beat, and I must admit, usually the songs they tend to go for Charleston I usually can't stand, but this one is what I actually can stand, so that's a good thing. And it's fun. It's really fun, this recording. Again, you could sort of feel, sort of feel the happiness and fun that Michael and the girls and everyone's having. And it's brilliant, and sort of, it's interesting. I think listening to this recording, you could imagine yourself sort of at a party almost. It's got that sort of party atmosphere, I think, to it. That's just my view. Again, if you would like to share your views, and feel free to, obviously, in the comments down below when the video's up, that is. Right, on to track 4 next. So I've just finished listening to track 4, and as I said, it's White Christmas, a duet with Shania Twain. And what's really interesting is White Christmas generally, the many versions that certainly Bing Crosby, the one most famous of it, and other people, is it's generally done as a slow ballad. But Michael decides to go the way of the Drifters, not the Platters, I got them too confused, version. So it's basically a fusion of that, but also big band, jazz, swing as well. And the Drifters version, you hear it in the first Home Alone when Kevin puts, I think, shaving cream on his face. I think it's shaving cream. I'm sure you know the bit that I mean. So it's interesting, and obviously getting Shania Twain. I remember, before listening to that album, I didn't even know Shania Twain was still recording it. As I'm sure you may know, Shania Twain was really big. Well, she's not as big as she once was, certainly over here in the UK, but in the 90s, her album Come On Over was quite big, and generally, occasionally, she sort of hovered around the UK charts, but generally, I didn't even know she was still recording prior to listening to this. I mean, the first time I listened to it, obviously I do now know that she is still recording, but yes, and the voices work really well, and I must be honest, it's two names I never expected to see together. Shania Twain and Michael Bublé, despite them both being Canadian, as you know. The voices work really well, and it's another fun take on White Christmas. Alright, well, let's see what track 5 is, shall we? So, track 5 is a cover of Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, and if you find Mariah's voice a bit too powerful, which, as you know, if you do know me personally, I pretty much can't stand, the diva singers like that. But the only time I do play Mariah Carey is All I Want for Christmas Is You. And if you even can't stand her on that, then Michael Bublé's voice is pretty relaxing. He does put a tiny little bit of power, but obviously, you know, he doesn't have the power that Mariah has. So if you're not a fan of the really powerful voice, then I think this is for you. It's nice. It's obviously, it's sort of a bit more low key. You know, there's a few sleigh bells in it, but it's, you know, it's less over the top, because if you think, you know, the original is, in terms of arrangement, you know, it is a bit over the top, isn't it? And I think that's probably what Mariah would have been going for with that. Samantha Mumba's also done a version, if you remember her. I mean, I don't even know what she's doing these days, but she was big for briefly during the late 90s, early noughties, and then just completely faded away. I don't like her voice either, so it's sort of the best of a bad bunch, really, whenever I listen to it, because I go for Mariah's original. This sounds like a sweet, doesn't it? Mariah's original. You've got Werther's original. Yeah, but anyway, if you don't like powerful voices, then Michael's version is the one for you. Right, so let's hop on to the next track. So I've just finished listening to track 6, and it's Holly Jolly Christmas, as I said, a song made most famous by Bill Hives. Unlike Bill Hives' version though, Michael doesn't slide his voice on Christmas, which is it's a weird thing. One of the things I can't stand from artists, I'll give you a demonstration. Holly Jolly Christmas, you know, sort of, and yeah, like cabaret. Ugh, it's revolting when artists slide their voices like that. Well, in my view. So Michael doesn't do that. I mean, I don't know why Bill Hives thought to do that. Anyway, it's pretty much a replica of, in terms of the instrumentation, to Bill Hives' version, pretty much. Yeah, apart from there's no backing vocals, which would have maybe brightened the track up a bit, having a chorus, but no, apart from that, it's in the words of Ashford and Simpson, solid. Yep. Right, so let's go to the next track. Okay, so I've just finished listening to track 7. It's a cover of Eartha Kitt's Santa Baby, although some of the lyrics have been changed, with Michael obviously being a man, and well, yeah, you could kind of understand. It's quite funny, actually. Yeah, it's I bet though it wouldn't get played on Radio 2, because the BBC are very funny about songs with brands in. Mind you, well, actually, I think Eartha Kitt's original and Kylie's version have both been played on Radio 2, so yeah, I don't know, that's the radio station I listen to. Yes, it's, in terms of arrangement, it's pretty much the same. The key's different to Eartha's original, and hey, that sounds like another sweet. And Kylie Minogue's one, and Madonna's one. Loads of people, I've just been looking through, loads of people have done it. Yeah, there's not really too much to say, really. Generally, yeah, I think I have to say, for me, Eartha Kitt's original is the best one for me. Kylie Minogue, I don't like her voice on it, and she makes this overly sort of sexual noises. Yeah, it's that's a bit annoying. Madonna's, I did look at it once. I don't think I was that impressed, but yeah, I think Michael probably comes second. But for me, I think it's Earth's song, I think. But yeah, Michael does a very solid cover. Right, let's move on. So I just finished listening to track 8, and it's a version of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, of course originally sung by Judy Garland in the film Meet Me in St. Louis in 1944. Here's a fact for you. So in Michael's version, he sings Hang a Shining Star Upon the Highest Bar. Well, Frank Sinatra, when he recorded it in 1957 for his album A Jolly Christmas, asked Hugh Martin, the composer, if he would jolly up it, make it jolly, because his album was called A Jolly Christmas. And and he wrote that, and so artists have recorded it using that lyric, but also the original lyrics as well. And it's wonderful, and it's a song that, it's not meant to be an upbeat song, it's meant to be a gentle ballad. I'm really glad that Michael didn't attempt to really make it up tempo, because it's not designed for that, really. And if someone was to make a dance version of that, I would be absolutely horrified. I would, because it's wonderful. It's a masterpiece, it is. And the original lyrics, and we'll have to muddle through somehow. I think that's also very appropriate as well, isn't it, with everything that's gone on from the past few months. And it's a masterpiece. It's brilliant. The arrangement is just, the strings and the orchestra, it's fantastic, and Michael's voice as well, just priceless, absolutely fantastic. Right, so let's move on to the next track. So we're on to track 9 now, and it's Christmas Baby Please Come Home, originally recorded by Darlene Love for the 1964 compilation A Christmas Gift to You from Phil Spector, which is a very famous album. It features the Ronettes on it and the Crystals, and you often hear those on the radio. And Darlene Love, who, if you recognise the name, she recorded the very similar sounding All Alone on Christmas for the soundtrack to the 1992 film Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. And yes, Michael's version is pretty much a carbon copy of the original in terms of arrangement and backing vocals and all that stuff. The only difference is that the key has been altered to suit him, so it's in a different key to the original. This is a rare example, actually, and it is the first version I heard of this song, or that I remember of hearing. But I actually do prefer the cover in this case to Darlene Love's original. I just prefer the key. I think it's a much more, exciting key, if you like, musically, which seems a strange. I don't know if anyone has ever said those words, but that's just what I think, and it's often when I play Christmas songs just to listen to in my free time, when I'm in a sort of pop mood, if you like, as opposed to the crooner's easy listening, this one is on there because it's great. It's really good. You could imagine it being on the soundtrack to a film, at the end credits or something. It's that type of song. It's a very feel good song. It's perfect for a Christmas party, it's a really, really good song. The song itself, it's a classic. It's a shame that it's because I was reading, the original version didn't chart at all. It basically flopped. I don't think Michael's version did chart. I suppose technically it might have done because, of course, the Christmas album did. Michael Bublé's one, that is. Generally, I think if you asked a lot of people on the street, do they know the song Christmas Baby Please Come Home? I don't think a lot of people would, but it's a fantastic track. It's one of my favourite tracks off the album, and and it shows, Michael Bublé, although of course people do, and yes, he is a crooner, jazz and big band swing, but he can sing pop as well, and I said this in my previous video, the update video, that he is, I think, our version of the late great Bobby Darin, in the fact that he writes some of his own songs. He can sing pretty much any genre. I haven't heard him do country yet. That would be interesting, although I think he'd suit that as well. So he can sing pretty much any genre, and writes his own songs. So yeah, I think he is our version of Bobby Darin, who a great musician who we lost far too soon. And if you don't know who Bobby Darin is, because I suspect I'm probably one of the few people of my age to know who Bobby Darin is. But look him up, because he's just absolutely fantastic, and we lost him way too soon. And so many genres, so many kind of songs, and just really, really fantastic. Really, an all-round entertainer. And the fact he writes songs, he could, sing well. I suppose he could dance as well. Really, the all-round package. Sort of like if you're, obviously, like here in the UK, Bruce Forsyth, he was, an entertainer like that, and he could do pretty much anything. And Bobby Darin was in that mould. But yeah, anyway, I'm slightly going a bit off topic, which I do apologise. But yeah, for me, this is the best track off the album. Right, time to move on. So we're on to track 10, probably one of the most famous traditional Christmas carols, Silent Night. And I have to say, it's brilliant. I mean, that's proper, gives you goosebumps in a good way, that. The orchestra, and there's even a moment when the orchestra stop and you just hear Michael's voice, and wow, I mean, that's a sign of a good song to, give you that feeling. And the children's chorus as well, it's wonderful, really, really wonderful. Just absolutely no negative thing to say about it. It's just beautifully orchestrated and beautifully sung, and wonderful arrangement, and just class. A masterpiece, definitely. Right, let's move on to track 11. So I've just finished listening to track 11, the version of Blue Christmas. Now, if you ask anybody on the streets, do they know Blue Christmas? They will say yes, and they will say probably only one name associated with that song. The king himself, Elvis Presley, who is arguably the most famous version of it. Lots of artists have done it. When I tend to put Blue Christmas on, it's either two versions: country great Glenn Campbell, or really sort of one of the pre-rock and rollers before Elvis, Fats Domino, who's really great. And in fact, his version of Blue Christmas is very upbeat. This one is quite the opposite. In fact, it's very dramatic, actually, with the whole ending and stuff. It's you could imagine Elvis doing it in Vegas with the jumpsuit era, because when Elvis recorded it in 1957, that was pre-Vegas. That was pre, when people think of Elvis, they think of the white jumpsuit, don't they? And they think of him sort of, Vegas, but that was pre that. But you could imagine Elvis in the 70s actually, getting on the floor and just really going for it with that. I have to say it's not my favourite version. It's just about bearable. For those of you who know me personally, you'll know that I have a weird reaction to certain singers and certain sounds and instruments. I start to shake and start to feel a bit unwell, actually. Now, I did get to this point with this song. It was comfortable, just about. And, you know, it's thanks to Michael's voice, really, who, you know, doesn't do anything vocally wild, really. But I did not enjoy the clarinets. That's one instrument I don't particularly enjoy. And the trumpet was a bit aggressive for me. I like the trumpet, as long as it's not a muted trumpet. And yeah, to be honest, if I was in the studio, I would have wanted to, well, I would have knocked the trumpet out of the trumpet's player hand and happily stand on it, because I think muted trumpet in my, well, a mute for any instrument is the call of the devil, in my opinion. But yeah, it's very different to Elvis's, because Elvis's is sort of bluesy and rock and roll. This is more sort of swinging towards, see what I did there, jazz and Dixieland ragtime, sort of. And I suspect, well, Billy Eckstine, who was a jazz artist known for his duets with another great singer, Sarah Vaughan, I know he did a version of Blue Christmas, and I did listen to it once, but I can't remember whether it was that, but I suspect it would have been very similar to that. But yeah, for me, I think I definitely prefer Glenn Campbell or Fats Domino for me. Elvis has always made me feel a bit weird because his voice is so deep, and Millie Kirkham, who does the woohoo, you know, it's well, she goes quite high actually. It is a bit of a weird, it just made me feel weird. Yeah, I'm just about all right with it now, because I heard it on the radio. Well, I heard it twice actually yesterday. I heard it played on Radio 2, and then I heard it on, I was watching Now Christmas, the music video channel, and they showed when they basically blended Elvis's voice with that of Martina McBride, who has a lovely voice. So yeah, I'm all right with it now. And actually, for a long time, that song it put me off Elvis. I remember going to see Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and the Pharaoh, as you will know, impersonates Elvis, and I was very wary of that, and it did really put me off listening to anything Elvis-y. But you know, I found that Elvis no longer has that. You know, it doesn't make me ill. You know, now feel ill now, and yeah, I mean, I like Suspicious Minds. I mean, that's a classic, isn't it? My favourite era. I know I'm going off topic here, but my favourite era of Elvis is the late 60s, early 70s, when before he gets fat, but he's in the jumpsuits. He's just started at Vegas, and for me, that's I mean, I would have loved to go see Elvis in Vegas, because just if you've seen any of those, you know, live recorded performances on YouTube, it's just amazing. His energy, his passion, it's brilliant. And I think everyone knows Elvis Presley. Everyone knows of Elvis Presley. If you haven't, I don't think you're from this planet. But anyway, sorry, getting off topic now. Yeah, I think it's not one I'd like to listen to very often. I listen to it purposely for this review, but it's not going to be one that I'm going to be digging out a lot. I think for Blue Christmas I will stick to Fats Domino and Glenn Campbell's versions. Dean Martin is a good one as well. Yeah, and so does Jim Reeves and Johnny Cash. So yeah, it turns out that the song actually is a good one. And actually, here's an interesting question for you. If a sad song is catchy, has it basically failed its purpose? That's a really interesting one, isn't it? I'd love to know your thoughts on that, maybe in the comments. What do you think? It's been a question I've been asking to myself, because Blue Christmas is catchy. It is very catchy. You know, it's a great one for karaoke, I would think. Although, well, I'm not sure many people would actually go for it for karaoke, but if they did, I could see why. Anyway, right, let's move on to the next track. So, track 12, and it's called December Nights. It's an original song, and again it demonstrates Michael's ability to jump genres and for him to sing pop. And it's a nice song. It's really lovely. It's catchy. So that's always a good start. And you know, it's not easy, especially when you're doing a Christmas album, to have a good original Christmas song. It's probably one of the hardest tasks for an artist, you know, especially when there's loads of, well, yes, I suppose you could argue that all Christmas songs, you know, that we all know and love now, were once, you know, new and, you know, original. Of course they were. But it is a very, very tough task to sort of put songs that you could put alongside all the ones you know and love. But I think, Michael, it's a very solid track. It's one that I, again, if I'm in a pop mood for the Christmas songs, Cold December Night makes the cut. So it must have done something right. Right, let's move on to the next track. Track 13, I'll Be Home for Christmas, is, I think, a masterpiece and just a beautiful, beautiful Christmas song. It was written in the 40s when, of course, we were at war for World War II. And Bing Crosby, he was the first person to record it. I mean, well, he is Mr. Christmas, isn't he, Bing Crosby? Perry Como's done it. Connie Francis has done it. Elvis Presley has done it. And I think, actually, even though it is a beautiful arrangement, and Michael's voice does really fit well, I think for me, I prefer the Connie Francis version. I think it's interesting, you know, a different key sort of somehow brightens up the song a little bit. You know, with Connie's version, it sounds, you know, a bit more brighter, but with the key used for, you know, to suit Michael, it sounds a little, you know, more morbid. It's I think that's another interesting thing of using a key change in a song. So for me, it has to be Connie Francis, and I just love the arrangement in Connie's one. But it is a very good version, and you know, I think apart from Elvis's, which I felt weird at the end of his one, because it was just way too deep, his voice, for me. But yeah, I think Connie Francis's cover, I think, beats the Bublé, but it's still a very, very good version and still a very lovely arrangement. Right, let's move on to the next. Track 14 is Ave Maria. You may know it in the Disney film Fantasia, but of course it's much older than that, written by Franz Schubert, I think. That's how you would pronounce it. It's German, and it's just wonderful. It gives you goosebumps, but in a great way, and the whole arrangement is wonderful. It's stunning, and the orchestration is so lush and beautiful as well, and Michael's voice, you know, really suits the song well. I think it's based off, this version, particularly an arrangement, is based off Frank Sinatra's version, which I heard once, and which wouldn't surprise me. I don't know, I'd have to go and listen to that again, which it's never a chore listening to the chairman of the board himself, but yeah, anyway, it's a fantastic song, and I now, when I listen to the crooners now, because before I was listening to Mario Lanza, the late great opera singer, doing Ave Maria, but the axe has swung on him, and I swapped him for Michael Bublé's version, which for me, the arrangement is just stunning, as I said, and yeah, now it's a staple of when I listen to the crooners at Christmas. So it's absolutely fantastic. Right, let's move on. So track 15 is My Wishes in English and / Feliz Navidad. I'm not going to attempt the Spanish pronunciation, but it's interesting because it's a bossa nova version of Feliz Navidad. It's a lot slower than Jose Feliciano's original. If you recognise the name Jose Feliciano, he wrote Light by Fire by the Doors. In fact, his cover of that, which was very in bossa nova style actually, hit the UK charts. And yes, and his version has become a classic. He recorded it and released it 51 years ago, so yeah, definitely a long time ago. And Thalia, I'm guessing the pronunciation of the singer, with Michael Bublé. And what's interesting is they decided to specially record a crowd at one of Michael's concerts to mix into the recording. I mean, why would you mix a live crowd into a studio recording? It seems a bit bizarre to me. Anyway, I suppose, I'm answering my own question here, that, I suppose it gives it a good atmosphere, I suppose, but it does seem like a strange move as well. Yes, I mean, you could imagine, with Feliz Navidad being done in a bossa nova style, you could imagine Antonio Carlos Jobim doing it. If you don't know who he is, he did an album with Frank Sinatra, bossa nova music, and he wrote The Girl from Ipanema, arguably one of the most famous bossa nova songs, which has been recorded by loads of people. I think it's been one of the most recorded songs, in history, I think. So yes. And it's lovely. It's different. I think I prefer Jose Feliciano's original recording with the trumpets and the fast pace, because that's better for a party. If you want to relax on the beach, though, this is the one for it. And I'm gonna skip Michael's Christmas greeting, because if you want to go find it, then feel free to. But this is music, album reviews, so I'm gonna skip that if you're okay with that, and then we'll move on to the bonus tracks. So the first of the bonus tracks is Michael's version of Winter Wonderland, and it's quite interesting because Winter Wonderland is generally done as quite a slow ballad, but this is done in an up-tempo, big band, jazz, swing style. It's good. I enjoyed it. It's certainly different. I have to say, I've heard many versions of this song, and I think the version that is my favourite is Doris Day's one, because it's just so wonderful, and the arrangement and stuff. Yeah, I think this one actually, in my opinion, works better as a slow ballad than an upbeat big band jazz swing version. But obviously Michael wanted to try something a bit different, and he did. So, right, let's move on to the next track, shall we? The next bonus track is Michael's version of Frosty the Snowman, and if you had jazz in a club in Ibiza, you know, where they would usually play dance music but they were playing jazz, then that's what they would play at Christmas, because it's something you could actually rave to, which is not something you generally think of with jazz and big band and swing, but it is. He's accompanied by the Papini sisters once again, who, unlike on Jingle Bells, I don't think they had anything particularly special really to this track. And in fact, I'd rather they not be on this track, which is a shame because they're fantastic, and you know, they keep the spirit of, you know, groups like the Andrews sisters, and they're fantastic on Jingle Bells with Michael. But no, I'd rather they weren't on this. But the girls are fantastic, and clearly, you know, from this album, you know, they've Gary Barlow's got them on their new album, and I'll be reviewing Gary's album, The Dream of Christmas, later this month on the channel. But yes, I think Frosty the Snowman, I've heard many versions again, because it's been recorded by lots of people. I think for me, well, it depends. If I'm in a pop mood, then I like Jan and Dean, Jan and Dean's version is really weird because it would be as if you'd expect the Beach Boys to do it. The Beach Boys did do Frosty the Snowman, but much slower and not really very Beach Boys-esque, if you get what I mean. So that's really funny, isn't it? The Beach Boys, you know, Jan and Dean did Beach Boys-esque version, but the Beach Boys themselves did a completely different version that didn't really sound like the Beach Boys. It's a weird one. And I've also heard Nat King Cole's version, which has what is now known as the chipmunk effect. So when you know, pitch your voice, and like Alvin and the Chipmunks and Chip and Dale and people like that. Yes, that's fun. Oh, and Perry Como's version as well. I think for me, Perry Como, Nat King Cole, and Jan and Dean, I think are my favourite versions, and I think Michael's version is probably fourth in my list, so I do prefer those versions. However, it is a fun version, and yeah, I mean, I bet the band, you know, the musicians were really having a ball on that, because you know, that they probably would have wanted to dance themselves, because it is a great arrangement. Yeah, it's an interesting and different take, and obviously Michael wanted to try something new, as Sainsbury's once said. We will. I think it's not my favourite version, so yeah, let's move on. So I just finished listening to Silver Bells with Naturally 7. Now, Naturally 7 are basically a cappella group, and they basically make the noises of instruments with their voices. In fact, I couldn't quite tell, I mean, because it did sound like real instruments to me with this. But if it wasn't, my goodness, they've done a good job, because they could fool anybody. It's a good version of Silver Bells. I don't think it's my favourite though. I think Jim Reeves for me is the perfect, and I mentioned him earlier. If you don't know who Jim Reeves is, he's we lost him way too soon, but a fantastic country singer, sort of the country version of Elvis Presley, I suppose, in terms of vocal style, but sort of a cross between a crooner, like, say Sinatra and Elvis and Johnny Cash, I suppose. Wonderful singer. And, well, the other version I know is someone who was not known particularly for his singing, although he did have a go a couple of times. Here in the UK, the late great entertainer Sir Terry Wogan, along with singer and television presenter Alan Jones, released a cover of Silver Bells for the Bandaged album in aid of BBC Children in Need. I remember hearing that, and I was just looking up, it charted at number 47, I think, in 2009. And I thought it was quite interesting because in this version I heard Michael sing, like, the core of Santa Claus is waiting there, because I haven't heard that lyric on any other version except Alan and Terry's version. So I thought that was particularly very interesting as well. But a very good addition, and you know, yeah, like I said, I can't work out if it's real instruments or whether it's naturally seven doing all the instrument parts, but vocally, if you get what I mean. Yeah, very interesting. Right, let's move on to the final track. So I've just finished listening to Michael's version of Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, which was released for the 10th anniversary deluxe edition of the album. And it's closely, in terms of arrangement, very similar to Frank Sinatra's version, which is what it reminded me of, which, well, again, is not surprising. I think for me, though, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, when I always play it, it's Dean Martin, because for me, the whole arrangement, his voice is just wonderful. Dean recorded it, well, first in 1959, and that's the version you often hear on the radio, but he also recorded it in, I think, 1966 for the Dean Martin Christmas album, and the album for his version in 1959 was called A Winter Romance, so it wasn't specifically a Christmas album. A Winter Romance was, and and then he recorded it again for his 1966 album, the Dean Martin Christmas album. So I think Dean's is the version for me, and but it's still a good version. You can tap your feet to it, and it's good, and you know, I do like my big band jazz and swing. That's the kind of jazz I like. And that's what this is, so yeah, all in all, very good. So the next track was a song which was written for the film Silent Night. It's a new film coming out this Christmas, and it's written by one Gary Barlow, along with Michael, the Christmas Sweater. And Gary has, I've just looked, has recorded it for his Christmas album, so I'll be kind of reviewing his version. Be very interested to hear his version, actually, whether it's pretty much the same or we'll just have to wait and see. And the thing that I tell you what, it does remind me of this song, with the tempo and the beat and the whistling. It does remind me of Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. So I wonder if Michael was inspired by a bit of Eric Idle and Monty Python. I suspect not, but that would be quite funny if he did do a version. Having said that, of course, Harry Nilsson, the great Harry Nilsson, actually was a Python fan and recorded a version of Always Look on the Bright Side of Life on what would prove to be his last studio album, Flash Harry. Yes, that's what it was called. And so if Michael decided to do a version of Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, I suppose it wouldn't be too out of the ordinary, but it would still be a surprise. Right, I really like this track. I think it's really good. It's so good that it's, you know, when I'm playing the pop Christmas songs, it's up there. So yeah, I have 3 tracks from Michael when I'm listening to the pop Christmas music: Cold December Night, his version of Christmas Baby Please Come Home, and the Christmas Sweater. Now I'm a bit baffled, which is the original, Michael's version of the Christmas Sweater or Gary Barlow's, because the versions are both coming out at the same time. So Yes, that's a very interesting one, isn't it? Right, anyway, it's a fantastic track. I really like it. Good pop track, you know, it's a good one for parties. And I must admit, when I heard that Michael had done a new song about a Christmas sweater, I thought, oh, as you can see, I like my Christmas sweaters, but the idea of doing a song about one, I thought, oh, I don't know, this is straying into novelty territory, surely, but no, it's a really decent song, and like I said, he's never let me down yet, Mr. Bublé. So, anyway, on to the next track. So I've just finished listening to the solo version of White Christmas, and there's not too much to say about it really. It's in a different key, but it's pretty much the same arrangement, and there's no Shania Twain. It's literally just a solo version, and yeah, not too much to say, so best move on to the next track if you don't mind. So the final track I'll be reviewing was released in 2015, but it's been added to the 10th anniversary of the Christmas album, and it's The More You Give, The More You'll Have. It's a really wonderful song. I remember, well, I'd almost forgotten about it, but I do remember it coming out at the time and getting a lot of airplay on Radio 2, as you'd expect. It's like a cross between pop, slight jazz, and Motown. Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It's really, really good, and yeah, it's a really enjoyable track. Be a good one for if you're having a Christmas disco or a party, you know, and it would get everybody on the floor. You know, it's a really good track. You know, reminds me of so many of those Motown tracks, and also, you know, Billy Joel's Tell Her About It as well. So yeah, imagine that for a collaboration, Billy Joel, Michael Bublé. Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, that's the final track. Because it isn't the final track on the album, but the final track is another version of White Christmas, and I don't want to be repeating myself. I've already done White Christmas, and I don't think there's any need to. I mean, yes, it might be a solo version or something, but for me, I'd rather just leave it if that's okay. And that's it. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed my first ever album review. I've certainly enjoyed making this video, and if you have enjoyed it, feel free to make sure to like, share, comment and subscribe to the TubeMix YouTube channel. And next time I'll be reviewing Gary Barlow's Christmas album, The Dream of Christmas, which, as I said, Gary co-wrote the track The Christmas Sweater with Michael Bublé and recorded a version for his album as well, Gary Barlow, that is. So it'll be interesting to hear how that version compares and the rest of the album. Find out next time, and yeah, I'll be coming soon for you. For now, stay safe everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys, bye bye.